Hi everyone, thank you for joining me. I have another card from Simon Says Stamp's newest release, Let's Chill, featuring a gorgeous stamp set, Butterfly Dreams. This pretty card is a flat shaker peekaboo, a bit of a mouthful, but it's easy to make and it is mail friendly. I'm starting off by die cutting the windows in my panels. I have 2 pieces of 80-pound cardstock, black cardstock, and then my card base. The panels measure 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. All of the panels are lined up with one side of the card base. A little bit of purple tape holds everything together. And then I position the circle die so that it is in the top 2/3 of the card. I run it through the die cutter, but of course it's not going to die cut through all of those panels of cardstock. The die cuts through the 2 panels of 80-pound cardstock, but not the black cardstock nor the card base. It just left an impression, which is perfect. So I tape those 2 back together, and I'm going to select my next biggest circle die and die cut them with that. This larger die was centered over the impression left from the previous one. This will ensure that the edges of the black cardstock and the card base are not going to show through that flat shaker peekaboo window. The black cardstock panel is going to be the mat for the card base. I'm going to use one of the dies from Simon Says Stamp's stitched rectangles to cut it. The black panel now measures 5 1/8 by 3 7/8. Final measurement for the 2 white panels is going to be 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. Right now they are A2 size, and so I'm going to take 1/2 inch off of the height and the width. To keep the windows in alignment, I have to take the same amount off of each of the 4 sides, so I will trim them by 1/4 inch. These 2 white panels with the acetate will create an independent flat shaker. And yes, I will be taking the purple tape off. And before I go any further, I make sure that my 2 white panels are aligned and will sit with a thin reveal on the black panel. I'm going to be stenciling one of the white panels, and the circle is going to be the peekaboo portion of the card, so I insert it back in and use a little bit of tape to hold it in place. I'm going to use the cloud profile on Simon's Build a Rainbow stencil to apply positively saturated inks. The pressure on my blender brush is kept quite light, so I have a nice soft coloring as I apply 2 layers of clouds of each color, starting with Seafoam, Celery, Lemonade, and finishing up with Cheeky. The cloud profile on this stencil is quite long, so I'm able to shift it to get different profiles as I move my cloud cover up the card. Post-it note tape is used to cover up other elements on this stencil so that I don't accidentally include those in my background. And there's an unexpected bonus to this. As I'm doing my stenciling, the Post-it note adhesive that is covering those openings is actually holding my stencil in place. If any of the products grab your attention and you want more information, I have links in the description of this YouTube video or on my blog at bonniecarolee.com. There will be some embossing on this panel, and the saturated inks take some drying time, so I set it aside and work on some other elements. The black cardstock mat is adhered to the card base. The same circle die that was used on the black cardstock and card base will be used to die cut acetate. This will be a little bit larger than the one that was used for the 2 white panels. I choose an acetate that is heat resistant because I will be doing some embossing on it. Because of the peekaboo element, 2 acetate circles are die cut. I can go ahead and adhere one of the circles to the white panel that will be the back of the shaker element. I'm going to be using a double-sided tape by Sue Kwang. This is a strong adhesive. I won't have to worry about the shaker material escaping, nor do I have to be concerned about getting the adhesive on the acetate window. The second acetate window will be adhered after the embossing. Because the die cut openings on the black cardstock and the card base were a little bit bigger than the peekaboo windows, I'm going to cut a gold frame just to clean that up on the inside of the card. Second piece of acetate is centered over the opening on the back of my panel. I have a sticky mat insert on my MISTI which will be very helpful for the stamping that I'm about to do. All three of the butterflies are going to cross over between the acetate window and the panel. The images are not going to be stamped on the panel and acetate all at once. The little ridge that is going to be between the acetate window and the panel could interrupt the line of embossing, which I do not want. The layout of the stamps is picked up with the door of the MISTI, and then I give everything, the panel and the acetate, a good coating of the anti-static powder. One of the die cut circles from these two panels was placed over the acetate window, and then I stamped the images using Versamark ink. The images are coated with gold embossing powder. My heat tool is preheating. I'm just going to set this panel aside and go ahead and stamp the acetate window, and then when I'm ready to apply the heat, it will be at its maximum temperature and I won't have to hold that heat on long, minimizing the chance of warping. After my window had been centered on the back of the panel, I did use a little bit of purple tape to hold it there. But it is the sticky mat that's holding that circle in place so that my butterflies will be perfectly aligned between the panel and the window. I find initially that the embossing powder just really seems to stick to the acetate, but with a couple of good hard taps, it comes off. My heat tool is very hot, so I can go ahead and melt that embossing powder quickly. Even though the acetate is heat resistant, I do take a little bit of care applying the heat and taking it off and applying it again. All of the anti-static powder is cleaned up with a microfiber cloth. The butterflies on the acetate window are lined up to those on the panel. Like the other window, it's going to be adhered with some double-sided tape. I start off with just a little bit of the tape exposed so that I can adhere the bottom of the window. Then I go ahead and apply the tape all the way around the circle. Then it's just a matter of removing the rest of that backing paper, and the butterflies on the window will be aligned with those on the panel. Before I continue putting this flat shaker together, I'm going to give both windows a good buffing with the microfiber cloth to make sure that there's no finger marks on the window. More double-sided adhesive is placed around the edge of the window on the back panel. I remove my foam insert from my MISTI and place that right up against the corner. This will help me get the two panels aligned. I'm using a pastel rainbow mix by Studio Kasha for the shaker material. The confetti is moved around until it is fairly flat. Liquid adhesive is applied to the panel, avoiding the window area. When the top panel is applied, it is tipped upward, pushed right into the corner, and then laid flat. When the independent shaker is adhered to the card base, I make sure that the black cardstock reveal is even on all four sides. Because the die cut window is a little bit bigger on both the black cardstock and the card base, I don't have to worry about the edges of those showing through the peekaboo window. And to hold everything in place, I put my MISTI on top until the glue sets up. Now to add that circle background for the peekaboo. This would have been a lot easier if I'd remembered to adhere this circle before the independent shaker. But I somehow managed to get it lined up. Frame is adhered to the back of the window just to clean up that edge between the card base and the shaker panel. Same confetti used as the shaker material is used to embellish the front of the card. The confetti colors are coordinated with that of the clouds. To give each of them a beautiful jewel-like appearance, they're topped up with the clear drying Nuvo Crystal Drops Morning Dew. And that completes this card featuring Simon Says Stamps' gorgeous butterfly dreams. Be sure to check out the full Let's Chill release. There are some wonderful products available. I hope you enjoyed this video of a flat shaker with a peekaboo window, and as always, I appreciate your visit.